Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show, and we thank you for tuning in on the YouTube channel, listening to us on Google Play or iTunes, following us on Facebook, and of course like us, because that's so important in this day and age of social media, as we have found out. And thanks to our listeners at the Ville 93.9 in Louisville. And we go to Louisville now because a guy that everybody likes, he is the most accommodating person in all of public relations, the Senior Director of Communications and Media Services at Churchill Downs. And he joins us now, Darren Rogers. Darren, thanks for being on.
Kenny, a pleasure to be on. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, and I should ask you that because I imagine at this particular time it is all fairly quiet at Churchill Downs, and what's going to be just for all of us a madhouse over the next month as we get closer to the biggest horse racing day of the year.
Well, it's controlled chaos around here. You know, anytime you get within 6 weeks of the Kentucky Derby, we're working feverishly to prepare to host more than 170,000 fans on Derby Day. It's a tremendous week of racing. It's amazing how much the Kentucky Oaks has grown in the last decade, with more than 125,000 people and, approximately $50 million wagered on a Friday afternoon. That day is huge. And the day before that, we've branded as Thurby. So, we've had, 50,000 people on hand the Thursday of Derby week. And so that entire week has really grown in recent years, and so yes, we're preparing feverishly with our team here on track, and then when it's all said and done, you get to Derby Day. It's about 11 to 12,000 employees / vendors, volunteers that help put the show on.
Wow, and I can remember the day, which really isn't all that far back, where Friday was the day that Louisvillians and Kentuckians went. That was kind of like the local day. There was 50, 60,000, maybe 70,000 to be a big crowd. Not that far back. But like you say, the Oaks now, I believe, is still the second most attended horse race, obviously behind the Derby. I believe it still is the second most. It's right there around the Preakness or maybe ahead of it some years.
Yeah, the Preakness usually gets us in recent years. And then, with the cap now on the Belmont Stakes, whether or not there's a Triple Crown on the line, we're usually a strong three. But the amazing thing, the Derby week attendance, you go back, let's just go back 9 years ago or 10 years ago, 2009, 325,000, over the week. We're up to about 376,000 now. So it really is, it's grown tremendously. And the betting on that week, $218.9 million on our races. Last year it was $285 million. So you've really seen growth. Or actually, I take that back. Last year we were $311 million. So, I mean, it's about an extra 100,000 or $100 million in wagers in a decade. That's pretty significant growth in 10 years' time.
Darren, it's amazing to me how the Derby has grown, and I've been watching it since the 80s in person. Grew up as a kid watching the Derby, but being there in person, I'm not sure exactly what took off, but it certainly has, and I think if you go back to, when the Colonel was bringing people in, Matt Wynn was bringing people in and making the Derby something special and bringing all the big-time sports writers into Kentucky way back when, he would probably be stunned at the growth. People probably 30 years ago would be stunned at the growth of the Derby as it is now.
It really is. And you know what? I'm not saying this because you're online, but the partnership with NBC Sports has helped. It's been a great team. And, we've tried to grow it simultaneously beyond the sports pages. Let's celebrate the traditions. I've always believed that the Kentucky Derby, it's America's most extravagant and glamorous springtime sports party. I mean, it's the greatest party you're going to have after a Super Bowl party in early February. And you have the food, you have the fashion. There aren't many sports out there that have a 50-50 male-female demographic.
Right.
The Derby is one of them. And I'm sure you could speak to it. The only other one, I believe, is ice skating at the Olympics.
Yeah,
it
that's
just
it.
doesn't happen. So with the record hours of programming on NBC, people love to sit down, watch the stories, behind the scenes about the participants. But it really appeals to all different walks of life, of people seeing celebrities and the different, from how to make a derby pie and a hot brown and making a mint julep. It's pretty special. And again, it really appeals to all different walks of life. That's the beautiful sport of horse racing, non-traditional racetrack patrons. You have the affluent, to the aspirants, and to the blue collar workers and the party crowd. It really is all walks.
What I've enjoyed about this lately is the way things continue to evolve, and you're a big part of that because you're the guy that keeps up with what I read each week, and I think everybody in horse racing keeps up with each week. That is the Derby leaderboard. And as I was talking earlier in the show, I've always likened it recently with the point structure that's come about in the last few years to basically like NCAA tournament seeding. We've had one. Yeah, we had the Derby had the Louisiana Derby was a 100-point race, and we still have, Florida, Bluegrass, Arkansas, UAE, Santa Anita, Wood. I know I didn't do that in order, but they're all 100-point races. To the winner goes 100 points, and the point system in what used to be the money earning system has become the thing now. And I don't know, coincidentally or not, but we've had a string of favorites winning the Derby where we had long gap where the favorite was almost automatically throw them out because they weren't going to win the Derby. And now that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not the case. And it could be this year, though. I mean, at this point, and let me backtrack a little bit to something you said. To me, it reminds me a little bit of the basketball tournament in the sense that we've just finished the regional semifinals. Now we're into the regional finals. And you're trying to get to the Derby itself, although there's 20. That's our version of the Final Four in a way. The point system, which was instituted 6 years ago, or 2013 was the first year that we instituted it. What it did, it puts an emphasis on recent form, and it de-emphasizes, 2-year-old form. And in the old days, based on the amount of money a racetrack could throw at a given purse of a race, you might be in on scholarship, by winning, for example, say the Delta jackpot back in late November. We didn't believe that was the best. As stewards of the Kentucky Derby here at Churchill Downs, our mission since dating back to probably when the race was invented, we're trying to assemble the finest group of 3-year-olds and currently set to go a mile and a quarter on dirt on the first Saturday in May. And so we've lost some of the sprinters, we've lost some of the grass horses, those that were able to transfer to that form to dirt against open company. That's helped change the pace a little bit in the race, right? So right. It's a little more formful. I contend, however, it has to be, Kenny, a statistical anomaly that we've had 6 consecutive favorites with 6 years in the point system. There's no way a point system would make it any easier for a horse to compete going a mile and a quarter with 20 horses in the field. I refuse to buy that.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I think it makes, probably from handicapper standpoint, maybe they get a little better sense, but I'm with you on that. I just don't think it has mattered in my opinion, but I don't know if it's mattered that much that's automatic.
Yeah. It's, and at this stage, again, we're coming up within 5 weeks out. it's a, we don't have any standouts at this stage. I do believe that, it's a, we have the possibilities with these big races coming up that some of these horses are going to step forward and maybe grab that headline. I still believe Bob Baffert's two horses, Game Winner and Improbable, are the two most logical ones to beat. And as you know, a good coach, gets an athlete to be at its best when the best is needed most. And right now, the best is not needed for a Game Winner and Improbable. Bob Baffert, who's won the Derby, by the way, 5 times, looking to tie Ben Jones at 6 this year. I would fully expect Game Winner and Improbable to move forward and not be at their best. Move forward, but be close when they make their respective starts in the Santa Anita Derby and the Arkansas Derby. So it'll be interesting to see how it shapes up over the next 5 weeks, but over these next 3 weekends in particular. We might have a big type of favorite emerge. Who knows?
Yeah, we're talking with Darren Rogers, who will be the busiest man at Churchill Downs. I don't care what anybody else says that day, because guys like me will be calling him up and saying, I think it's about a quarter of a mile from the back stretch where I am now walking over. I think I called you that, didn't I, last year or the year before, and asked you. We're trying to mark it off on the walkover, which is still my favorite part of the whole Derby show I'm part of, is that walkover, because I know 170,000 people are there. All the trainers know they're there, but once they start walking over there, Darren, and you see it unfolding right before your eyes, it's still a sight, no matter how many times I've done it, and it's been a few dozen now. There's something special about that walkover that I would say is unique to all the other sports events.
It is, and it's quite a view. Are you aware that I've never made the walkover?
Well, I was going to ask you because you happen to be busy taking care of a few hundred press people and all the other requests that you get, so you don't have the opportunity to come over and hang out in the barns with me all afternoon and walk over.
No, we have, at that time, I'm usually positioned right as the horses turn from the racetrack into the paddock runway as they go into the paddock. And we have, people don't realize the amount of meetings that we go through talking about different subjects, and the walkover is one of them. We want the owners and trainers to have this memorable experience, but the number of people on that racetrack with 20, amped up athletes, these horses, we take that horse safety and concern. And I in particular, I always like to go right into that paddock runway at the tunnel to make sure people are moving, make sure people are aware that they have a hind quarter that could kick at any given moment right up against them. That's one of those things that we deal with. But we were trying to trace back the history of the walkover and when did it start to become really big, and we haven't gotten a definitive answer, but we believe it was in the late 70s with Seattle Slew that it looks like it started to really build, and what it is today. I mean, it's definitely one of those great traditions in sport. And
you come walk over with me this year.
You know what? This is Derby number 12 for me, and at some point I do want to experience it. And more from a curiosity standpoint, from operations. Yeah. I mean, the horses convene over in the chute at the 3/4 pole. We do time it and choreograph it with a timeline. But I've heard so many great stories from speaking with owners and trainers about the proximity of those fans right there on the rail and the box seat sections of people cheering them on, especially those that are born and raised here in Louisville. How special of a, first of all, it's special for any owner or trainer, even the breeders who have invested in this game, to have that opportunity to think about this. You're one of 20 horses that have qualified among a crop of about 22,000 plus. And you nominate, it's usually around 360 horses end up being nominated. These are the 20 best. Unfortunately, we can only end with one winner, and there's 19 people frustrated at the end. But what a special moment, just the whole day. And so anyway, it's a fabulous tradition, that walkover, where it's probably the last great moment they have, right?
Yeah,
because
everybody's a winner. Yeah, everybody's a winner at that stage.
Yeah, and even when you're in the paddock, you might be getting a little more nervous, and then you're working your way back to the box seats. But everybody's a winner at that stage, and it's a memorable moment, and it makes for great pictures on TV.
And you can call Darren Rogers and just ask him for credentials, as many as you need.
That's right. We're open for business, folks.
How many credential requests will you get, pal?
We usually get around 2,200 credentialed members of the media at the Kentucky Derby, and it's from about 250 different media outlets.
Wow. And you get them from the entertainment reporters. It's not, and the guys that cover basketball, and it's not just the horse. If it were just the horse crowd, you wouldn't have that many requests, obviously. I mean, there's not that many people covering horse racing on a day-to-day basis, but you get all the sports writers, you get the entertainment writers, you get the news reporters coming in.
Major networks,
all the networks. It brings it together probably more than any other sporting event, I could say, this side of the Super Bowl.
Well, the Super Bowl, I'm sure, gets it. I would imagine the most, the major sporting events would get it. But actually, you bring up a point, because, again, and it's been a focus on our company's part, is let's take the Derby beyond the sports page. Let's go, seek the entertainment. Just think about the Kentucky Derby red carpet alone. TMZ is probably going to be coming this year. That wouldn't ordinarily happen if you didn't have a red carpet. Those are good things for the sport. We have our hands full over the next 6 weeks.
And now, have you noticed much of an impact now with the invitation that can be extended on the Kentucky Derby Road through Europe and the Kentucky Derby Road through Japan now? We had Lonnie a couple of years ago, almost Gronkowski last year. Have you noticed a buzz even more worldwide with this opening up?
We do, and it's especially when you get a participant from one of those locales. Especially, anytime the UAE Derby comes over here, we're usually, the NBC broadcast is being shown in Dubai, and they bring a set out here, and they have their own anchors, and utilizing some of the pictures from NBC Sports, etc. But they have their own set, along those lines. The same thing with the Coolmore contingency. We've seen folks from Ireland, especially last year when Mendelssohn looked like he had a live shot. Right. People don't realize that the Breeders' Cup actually gets much more of an international racing media representation than the Kentucky Derby does. But in large part, it's because of Europe on Kentucky Derby Day. They're running the English 2,000 Guineas, which is a major race. But when Mendelssohn was here a year ago, we had a very large number. When Lonnie was here from Japan, we had a very large number of folks from Japan that came in to cover the race. So yes, there is an interest there. We're carving out a spot for a horse from Europe or Japan, whether or not the invitation is accepted or given. But we do believe in growing that international market and the popularity of the Kentucky Derby.
Darren, thank you so much for your time. I know it's very precious as we get closer to the Derby, and great insight as always. I thank you for being on with us today.
Kenny, it's always a pleasure. Look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
I look forward to it always. Darren Rogers, as good as it gets when you talk about public relations and people that keep everything together when all is chaotic around them. He is as good as it gets. Darren Rogers from Churchill Downs. We'll be back with more. Stay with us. This is the Horse Racing Show.